Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Pleasure to host you all today. This is Cynthia from Ramco Systems, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar on Voice is the Future of Employee Engagement. We have over 2,000 registrations for the webinar from all around the world, mostly HR and technology practitioners from several industries. Firstly, would like to thank you all for your interest and time today. Please keep your microphones on mute mode to avoid any disruptions. You can type in your question on the chat window during the webinar, and we will answer the same at the 15-minute live Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You can also use the hashtag voice is the new UI. Moving to the subject of today's webinar. What if and why not are the two questions that challenge the conventional and give birth to disruptive thinking. Disruption brings both inconvenience and opportunity with it. Last year, we embarked on a journey delivering chatbots as a medium of engaging with enterprise systems. ERP and HR systems, which hitherto grappled with clumsy screens and multiple fields, began to experience an all-new way to transact. Yes, that is chat. Gladly for us, this innovation streak hit the right chord with customers and research firms like Gartner, highlighting Ramco as among the only two to bring production-ready bots in workforce management. Fast forward a year, and we are here to launch yet another disruptive innovation. With that background, I'm happy to introduce HR thought leader William Tincup and innovation evangelist Virender Aggarwal on this webinar today. William Tincup brings almost 2 decades of experience in HR and technology and is seen by HR practitioners as a writer, speaker, advisor, consultant, investor, storyteller, and teacher. Virender Aggarwal, we call him VA, is the CEO of Ramco Systems and the force behind driving umpteen innovations on the enterprise applications front. This webinar is going to be conversational in approach between a HR practitioner and a product visionary coming together to share their thoughts. Gear up for an insightful session. Over to you, Will.
Absolutely. Thanks, Cynthia. First of all, I appreciate you including me in this wonderful topic. The first thing is if you look at what's happening at the home and you think to yourself about consumer technologies in general, Facebook, Twitter, Google, go through all actually look down at your phone right now, your smartphone, and look at all the consumer technology that you have on your smartphone. Okay. The advancements in consumer technology need to and will bleed over into business technology, enterprise software, if you will. So the changes in the consumer market are changing our expectations of enterprise software. So when we look down at our phone, we download an app, and if we don't like the app, we delete it. Like it's instantaneous. I downloaded an app, I don't like it, delete, go on, moved on. Our brains are being rewired to think that technology is here to serve us. But we're accustomed at home to asking questions and receiving answers. The search box, the old search box is Google. We would go to the place and then type in our question. Google, where is, Beirut, Lebanon, and then Google would then give us a bunch of answers, etc. But one of the things that we've learned at the home is that voice is not dependent on our smartphones. It's not dependent on having Alexa as a speaker next to us, etc. It's omnipresent. It's around us, and it's around us in a way that's natural. That's what's beautiful about it. What's happening at home is not forced. It's just a way to interact with technology that we can ask and answer, and all the while the technology is getting smarter. Which VA will have to explain how that happens. But the technology is getting smarter as we ask and answer these questions. So that's the backdrop of the consumer market. And it's important to kind of start there because that's where the innovation started. And now let's talk about the bleed over into the office. So employees, and I want to talk about three different experiences. We'll do that over the course of the webinar. Your candidates have an experience with your company. Your employees have an experience with your company, and the people that leave your firm, your alumni, they have an experience with your company. All of which can be made better with this new interface that we call voice. So, a couple things on employees. Let's start there. Their needs have changed. So, something to think about and why this is important for the business and for the office is that their needs have changed based on their internet usage, their smartphone usage, their usage of these devices like Google Assistant or Siri. They've changed. Their brains have been rewired. They're really accustomed to consumer technology, and they're accustomed to those things working for them as they navigate life. Again, important to kind of a side note, their brains are being rewired at home because of what's going on in their consumer market and what's going on at home with their kids, with each other, etc. Then they come to work, and it's not like those expectations get left at the door. They don't. And so it's up for us to start thinking about, well, how do we interact with this data? The good news is in HR, we have a ton of data. We're sitting on wonderful data all the way, from sourcing to outplacement. We're sitting on data, but the data is sitting in disparate, databases, and we don't have a great way to both get to the data and ask questions and get answers from the data. So to use voice is natural for employees because they're doing it at home and they're having those expectations. But better than that is it's a better experience for them. And that's where VA and I, and when we were concocting this webinar and talking about employee engagement. Well, how do you get employee engagement? Some would say that employee engagement comes down to discretionary effort. I think it comes down to micro experiences. It isn't so much about getting more yield or more work out of the employee. It's about having a better experience in general. So I'm going to use that word across the board, but it's micro experiences. There's little bitty tiny experiences. So let's kind of take a look at what we have right in front of us with these four things. Candidate wayfinding. So what is or isn't the candidate experience? So on some level, you have employees or candidates that you would like to work with your firm. You've sourced them, you've found them, you've marketed to them, they've applied to a job, you take them through a process. Like pretty natural, pretty normal. But what if they could ask questions? Not of you, but what if they could ask questions of the process? Like, when is my next interview? How long will the interview be? If I get the job and the offer letter, etc., how long before I'll be onboarded? So questions that plague candidates. I say plague. We're all the same. We all have these when we're looking for a job and we're going through that process. We all have these questions. And recruiters and hiring managers have been traditionally horrible at being able to answer these questions, and it's not for the lack of wanting to. It's for the lack of neither not having the time or not having a great interface in which to do that with a multitude of candidates. So instead of trying to get the recruiters and hiring managers to change their behavior in some way, let's give the candidates a way to ask those questions and get answers when they want to ask questions and get answers. And all of those micro experiences for candidates. That sets the tone for what happens in employment. So how we treat people as their candidates sets the tone for their entire experience at work. So now let's kind of move forward and say, okay, the candidates have a better experience, they have better micro experiences. They can ask questions, they can answer questions, and everything. They've just had a wonderful journey, and we've sent the offer letter, which is wonderful. And now they have been onboarded, and we start the process, if you will, and that's where all of talent management comes in, which is great. What we want to talk about right here is the concept of employee self-service. So that concept of employee self-service, where what are the questions that every employee has that we have historically made them go to a place. So go to the place and ask the question, or go to the place and seek out that information. I'll give you a couple examples. How much PTO do I have left this year? It's a great question. Or when's my next performance review or appraisal? Things like, what's our copay with Dr. Johnson? So these are questions that every employee has at every company in the world. They have these questions, and they're small generally, but they're questions they don't know how to answer themselves. And so what we've historically made them do is the ESS. Go to the portal, go to the intranet, go and ask those questions, and then HR will get back to you. And this goes really well into the strategic HR part of this. HR, as it's currently configured, is the call center for employees. So let that sink in for just a second. The way that we use HR right now and HR leaders is they're essentially answering questions from employees. Well, not in a call center, technically. That's what takes up their time. If you were to look at an HR leader or anyone that works in HR, 90% of their week is gobbled up by just answering questions from employees. These are important because this again gets back to engagement. If you can't answer my question, then why should I care? Why should I strive to do better at my job? So I mean, these things are tied together. Employees have questions, and right now they send email, or they'll use Slack, or they'll leave voicemails, which is worse, or they'll call the HR office, or they'll stand in line at the HR office, in real life, like they'll just stop work, walk down to HR, stand in line. I have a question, and these questions again can be something tiny, all the way to massive. Hey, my wife just got a brand new job in London. I want to stay with Ramco. This is huge. We are moving. The family is moving from Mumbai to London. That's happening. Okay, what can I do? Because I want to move. Obviously, I'm going to be moving because I'm going to stay with my wife. But what can I do? Now, that's a huge career-changing, internal mobility question. That right now, that person would probably most likely go down and have a private conversation with HR. Okay, so HR's time is gobbled up. Again, voice has a place here, and voice has a place in employee self-service, mainly in answering all those questions, from the benign and small all the way to the massive. Like, imagine you're at home, like you just found out your wife got the job in London. You're going to be moving. Well, okay, let's ask that question. Siri, what job opportunities are open with Ramco in London or surrounding areas? And then those jobs can come back to you in voice. So I don't have to go to HR. I don't have to walk down to the office. I don't have to send them an email. I don't have to have a private meeting. I just have to be able to ask the question and then get an answer. So we're still asking, as employees, we're still asking questions. And we're still, we still want answers, but the interface has completely changed and needs to change, and for all the right reasons. Strategic HR is a concept. It's a lofty ambition, and the reason that HR isn't as strategic as they'd like to be is because their time is spent in the call center. Their time is spent, on Sunday night, they look at their calendar and their time's already gone. So it gives us the strategic HR that we've always wanted. Which is not just a lofty ambition. With voice as our new interface to this data, it's not just an ambition. It's actually real. It's coming to a theater near us. The last point that I want to make on executive insight is it is the importance of the board and the C-suite and their frustration with HR. It isn't the people at HR that they're frustrated. They're frustrated that questions can't get answered in a timely manner and in the way that they want. And so, something is simple. If you're a global company, how many employees do we have today, right now, this moment? That's a CEO question, natural question. That's a finance question. That's natural and normal and gets asked every day. And the frustration, because we're sitting on 13 different payroll systems, of being able to answer that question from an HR perspective, that sends HR into a place where they have to go and research, find out, put data together, build a report, get back to them, and all of that time is wasted. And so they want voice because they want to ask people human talent related questions and get answers. If HR is more strategic because they've gotten their time back, then executives are going to be asking better questions of HR, and HR is going to be asking better questions of themselves. So, what we wanted to do in the beginning is just kind of set the tone for, okay, what you're experiencing at home is natural and normal. Nothing's forced. Okay, there's nothing forced, and those expectations and that experience and those micro experiences are coming to work. And they're coming to work all across the entire value exchange for employees. So from sourcing to outplacement, voice has a place. We're going to kind of keep talking about what we're doing at work, but right now I want to kind of talk to VA. And he and I have had some wonderful conversations about this concept of frictionless, interactions with technology. So VA, I know you're a visionary, and you and I have talked many times about this. But what's your vision around frictionless?
Thanks. Well, I think you painted a picture of bringing the home-like convenience to the office world, and I can tell you, trust me, there's a lot of plumbing required to understand simple English by the good old-fashioned systems, and that's our job. That's what we do for a living, and I've been using the term zero UI for a long period of time, and fortunately, the technology allows us to make it possible. Last year, I kind of force-willed the company into moving to bots so that you could use Facebook Messenger to get your transactions done, or Skype or any other chat media to get the job done, get the transactions done, ask the relevant questions, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to be the all-pervasive Google of your in-company data and present it in as simple a manner as possible. So after having done the chatbots, as the smart speakers becoming popular all over the world and start invading our homes, and people started spending more and more times with the speaker, we realized that we need to offer this to the office world now. And that's where we moved on to offering voice as the new user interface, thereby living in a world of zero UI and moving to voice and bots as an option. And also, as we move forward, gesture is part of the whole equation. When we say frictionless, we mean the computing happens automatically. You go about living your life normally. As you enter the office, the security camera recognizes you and your attendance is marked. You don't need to mark your attendance on the system. So that's frictionless. You just walked into office and you sat on your seat, and that's about it. And your attendance is. As you've been through your day, the system would possibly figure out what you have been doing and maybe, or try in order to fill your timesheet. that is frictionless. You feel like asking any question, like, am I covered by dental or this or that, and so on? You ask the question and get the answer. Speak or you type on the bot. The idea is the computing takes place automatically. The system takes the trouble of figuring out the answers for you and finding out the answers and learn over a period of time the answers that can keep improving as the time goes by. Understand various languages, dialects, syntax, the way of talking. And all this is possible because voice using either Alexa or Google is recognized 95% accurately, just about what human beings do. So whether Siri, Google, or Alexa understands your voice, they do with a similar accuracy as human beings do. So that is one change in technology that has happened. Second thing is the natural language processing. The computers, the smart speakers, the devices do understand normal English. And it's our job to convert that English into the plumbing that the computers understand. The computers still understand the very complex plumbing. And it's our job to convert that into the computer syntax and bring you the information, which is in normal English again. And that's the translation that happens behind the scenes. So that's what makes it frictionless. So while it's frictionless, there's a lot of work behind the scene that goes on in terms of technology. The advantage is a lot of work that would have happened in user interface has been taken away because the smart speakers do understand the human speech very well. So that enables us to bring this next generation technology and make it all pervasive and make it all easy for the entire set of company to use. And this does not limit itself to just the HR function. So that's my take on
Nice.
how the interactions go on.
Yeah, and you know what I love about your vision, VA, is it checks three boxes for me, and the three boxes that it checks for me naturally is it meets users where they are. First thing I love about that is it comes with me. Like the idea that when I walk into the office, it recognizes me, and I love the idea that you served up about the timesheet. Hey, notice you didn't fill out your timesheet for this week. I've already filled it out for you. Take a quick look at it. Love to submit that, etc. Like that idea. Second thing that really checks off for me is this idea of software being intuitive, and so meeting users where they are, software technology in general being intuitive too, and third, and I think this is where we get back to engagement, is this idea is that it's highly personalized. So Cynthia's experience at work, my experience at work, they're totally different yet the same. And we're in the same office. I sit four cubes over from her, and I have a vastly different experience, and I'm engaged at my level because it's personalized to my needs. So the frictionless, your vision around frictionless is important to me because it scratches those three things. It meets the user where they are. It's intuitive and it's highly personal. So I love that. Next, I want to kind of get to your the CEO point of view, and kind of how the CEO and the board interact and could potentially interact with technology, and what questions they could ask. And the reason why this is really important to me is this idea or concept of a recommendation engine that's there, because they have questions that aren't just HR, and they're not just about data within HR. They're thinking about data within HR, but also data that's outside of HR, both in the other silos, marketing, sales, ops, finance, etc. They're also thinking about data that's outside of the firm, data that's outside of the company. So CEOs don't think inside that box that we put them in. They don't think like that, and they want questions They want answers to their questions in real time rather than have a lag to those questions. It's important. You and I have talked about this. What's your perspective and what's your take on how executives should be interacting with voice and voice computing?
I think as long as the data exists in the system, it can be served, and the CEOs need maybe more aggregated and not transactional. And the questions that CEOs may take months to get an answer on can be answered instantaneously, and the system should be able to serve an answer. Just the CEO talks to the system as, how's my revenue per employee this month, or this department, or as a company as a whole, and how does it compare to the same period last year? Have we improved over last quarter, and if so, by how much percentage, and by last year, and by what amount? And how's my marketing department doing? How's the traffic to the website? How's the number of minutes people are spending on their web pages? What are they spending time on the web pages? Similarly, in sales, how many new accounts we have added to the company, how many new customers logos we have added to the company, or how many existing customers we have sold, how much, or any particular salesperson, what has been the percentage achievement of that target, of that country, or of that business unit, and so on. What are the regular questions we ask on a day-to-day life and, in operations? Similarly, in finance, how's my operating profit? How's my EBITDA? And how are we doing compared to last year? And maybe, how are we doing compared to the industry peers? As going outside the company, answer that extent. So I think it's not only limited to HR. As long as the data exists, capability to serve the data in a meaningful, simple manner exists. All I am saying is that there is a lot of plumbing required to get that information as simply presented as possible. But the whole idea is that we are here to make the life of people simple. The corporate systems do not get used because they are boring, clunky, and they don't understand your context. If my timesheet is normally very simple, I go to the same client every day and I book my 8 hours with the same client. Why should I be seeing a complex timesheet in which many projects space is given and so many activities are given and so on and so forth? The systems that are designed in today's world are designed for the most complex scenario, but everybody's scenario is not. The voice makes it simple. It understands your context and only serves you of your context and not present the whole words difficulties to you. And that's what makes the today's systems, applications, clunky, difficult to use and find information. We are saying that most people can talk. They can make sense of normal English. And as long as they can do that, we will try and give them as many answers from within the system and outside the system as possible. So with that in store, I think this is definitely, we are heading on to a very exciting area.
It's interesting, VA. To me, is I don't think we ever write about or talk about CEO engagement as a part of employee engagement. Like somehow there's a strata between the two. But truth is CEOs, all executives and all board members, they're humans too. They're just like us, but yet they're vastly different. They have questions, and VA just went through a battery of questions. But what's interesting is it can be something simple, like, hey, are we pursuing this account? Do I happen to have the cell number of the CEO of that company? Great. You know what? Go ahead and dial that number. Let me just leave him a voicemail real quick, because I want him to know that personally that I care and that I want us to be doing business together. So simple things, all the way to very complex things, and VA has already kind of elucidated or illustrated a bunch of different ways that CEOs can ask and answer questions. I want the audience to do a couple things. Hashtag voice is the new UI. That's important to me. But also, as you're thinking about the board and their experience, their engagement as a part of all employee engagement. The questions that they're asking or would be asking can come down to forecasting. So, like VA did a wonderful job of saying, "Hey, what are sales now as opposed to last year?" But that question could also be asked in the reverse of, "Okay, where are sales right now? Great. Where does the forecast look? What does Q4 look like this year? What does Q1 look like next year? Like what's already in the pipeline? What do we have?" So it can be reactive and predictive. And so the questions can be both, because if we're sitting on the data, as VA has already talked about, if we're sitting on the data, we can ask the questions both ways. We can ask what just happened, why, and potentially why it happened. But we can ask questions about what will happen, and get answers served up in that way. So now I want to move on to a concept that VA and I have talked about a number of times, is this idea of proactive computing. And proactive computing, I want him to tell you his definition, because it's going to be far more interesting than mine. But what I love about it, when he speaks about it, is that there's an intuition to computing that we don't currently have. And we have a little of it at home. And so we kind of got a taste of it at home, but we don't have it when we go into the office. So I want to get VA to tell the audience and to talk to the audience about his take on proactive computing. VA?
Yeah, I think I'll just cover this fairly quickly because we are running a bit of out of time. All I will say is that people who know me would know that I start my day with visiting coffee shop. And the moment I enter the coffee shop, I don't need to tell the barista anything. They know that they have to get my hot piccolo latte up and ready very soon. And that's what I call proactive computing, that I'm able to anticipate every need before it occurs, stated or unstated. That's the desire. Every time somebody has to interact with the system, I consider it as a failure of the system. Like you walk into office, your attendance is marked. But if you don't walk into office, just imagine a notification comes to your phone. Normally you're in office by 9 o'clock, it's 9:30 a.m. Is all well? Do you want me to apply leave, inform your boss, or tell me what to do, or help you with the doctor? And you say not feeling well, so to apply leave for me. Okay, I'm applying leave for you. I'll again check in the evening how you feel, and maybe apply for next day as well if you still don't feel well. And would you like to hop onto some conference calls, or should I cancel everything? And I'm canceling all in-person meetings and informing everybody. So you don't need to worry, including customers. I will keep them informed that you are not going to be in office today. So that's what I call proactive. That is, I can sense every need. I can auto do the job. I can auto fill your timesheet and suggest I fill this timesheet for you, or you have completed your trip to Hong Kong and I have auto-filled your expense statement based on what I've seen you spend in Hong Kong over past 10 visits. Yeah, that can be another way. Or if I see your schedule and say you must have finished this meeting with the customer, should I make an entry into the CRM? And would you like to edit the entry before I do? That's proactive computing. So the idea is to try and anticipate every need and try and fulfill every need. So that your need to call the system is much lower than you would normally do. So that's what we call proactive computing, and that's what we are moving towards. Our current product that we have will support some proactive transactions, and will autofill your timesheets, will auto ask you for applying leave if you're late or something like that, and we will move on progressively to cover more and more scenarios so that you don't have to ask the system. The system knows. If it sees an appointment with a doctor, it will automatically give you copay plans. Your copay plans for this doctor are like this, and you need to spend blah blah and so on. So that's what we call proactive.
There's an omnipresent assistant making your life better, and that happens at home, which you're already accustomed to. But we're talking about work now. And as VA just kind of went through this several examples of where an assistant, having a personal PA, having a personal assistant that it kind of knows what you're going through, understands the context, and then can action a bunch of things for you on your behalf. So things like expense reporting, things like canceling meetings, like that would be normally done by a human being, a physical being doing those things. Well, we don't have to have that. And that's what I love about proactive computing in general, is this concept that you're going to have an assistant. All of us, we're all going to have assistants, and for those of you that have never had assistants, it's actually going to be kind of fun. But it's, that assistant is omnipresent at work, and it's reading what the context, and it's already intuitively planning out what happens next.
Absolutely, Will. Absolutely. I think as we see exciting possibilities within the system, outside the system, within the company, outside the company. If you're looking for talent, the system will throw up the talent within the company, or will access the various job boards. Monster has this many, Seek has that many, and so on and so forth, and serve you that many you have within the company, and that's many candidates they can find outside the system. So the interaction is there. We are building APIs to various other source of information, be it flight information, be it hotel information, be it job boards through tools like Broadbean Network, whereby we can connect to a few thousand job boards with a single connection and serve you information. So the idea is, within the company, outside the company, as much information is available, we will be able to serve you. As we move to more and more open economy, where more and more other entities share the data, we'll be able to serve the real-time data to clients, which are in this case the employees of the company.
That's right. And again, with the goal to create better engagement all across the board. And engagement is a fancy way of saying experience. When you walk into a restaurant, when you walk into a retail, you have an experience. And that's been well thought of for the last 40 years. The people have thought about what you smell, what you hear, what you feel, and how your emotions go. That we're now doing that in business. And with the use of voice, we're thinking about how we make those experiences better. So, VA's already talked about like the hunt for talent, the ability to say and ask the question, how many Java developers do we have internally? Great. What's the need with our current load? How many more Java developers do we need? Okay, great. Do we have the talent pipeline for that? Okay, no. Okay, great. Externally, how many are within a 50-mile radius of the office? How many Java developers? Okay, great. Can send a personal note from me to each of those Java developers. Like, that can happen because, first of all, you're asking the questions, you're then getting the answers, and you're taking it into an action. And so the hunt for talent, which is a relentless, never-ending hunt, it becomes kind of a game of being able to ask questions, both of data that's internal, data that we have access to, readily have access to in our ATS or CRM, et cetera, but also data that's outside of the company and databases that are outside of the company. Another thing to think about is once someone moves from the candidate experience and they move over to the employee experience, the first experience that they have is onboarding. And onboarding, used to be a binder. It used to be a day. It used to be a week. It was this thing, maybe cultural, maybe it was an experience. But generally speaking, it's where we kind of dropped people off. So we had romanced them all throughout talent acquisition and recruiting. And then all of a sudden we got to the hiring part. We gave them a letter. They signed it. Now they're onboarded. Well, they show up. And it could be physically, or they show up wherever they are in the world. And then we just kind of drop them off in a place and kind of hope that everything works out. Well, the problem with that line of thinking is this is where we fail in employee engagement, is at the very beginning, because they're littered with questions. They have more questions than we have time to answer in real time. So voice plays a very important role. So we can have a better experience in onboarding, which sets us on a great path of having a better experience in total for the rest of their employee journey. So we have to start it off right. And this is not just an American thing. I actually think that we fail at onboarding all around the world because we do it the same. We just drop them off at a place and hope. And hope is not a strategy. So we can do employee engagement better here, and voice can help us here. The last thing we want to talk a little bit about is the performance appraisal and the performance plans. It's really interesting to think that let's say Cynthia and I work together, and let's say that she wants to give me feedback and I want to give her feedback. Well, I can actually talk to the assistant and say, hey, Cynthia did a really wonderful job on this PowerPoint presentation. Note that in her performance appraisal. And then the assistant can come back and say, well, that's fantastic, done. It's already in her appraisal. Would you like to reward her, or would you like to recognize her in a way? Yeah, I would actually. You know what? Give her a $20 gift certificate or gift card to Starbucks, and send a note out to the rest of the company, or put it on the company's feed that Cynthia did a wonderful job on this PowerPoint presentation. So thinking about the way that we do performance and the way that we think about performance, and performance is tied to many things. It's tied to learning. It's tied to compensation. It's tied to succession. It's tied to total recognition, rewards, and recognition. So performance isn't just about performance. Performance is about the connective tissue that it has with all the other parts of HR. And what if, and not a what if, but as we interact with voice, we can now do things in performance that we couldn't do before. We can put things in the file. We can recognize people in real time and have that also in their file, so that when we talk, whether or not it's monthly, quarterly, twice a year, once a year, whatever, we can talk, and it can be literally two human beings kind of reviewing what's going on. Like, hey, listen, I remember when you did this really wonderful job on this PowerPoint. I know we recognize you. I know all that stuff happened, but I wanted to say thank you. That was really cool, what you did. And that's the positive stuff that obviously we need to deposit there. But also the idea that, hey, somebody didn't show up to work prepared. The Q&A is, are we talking flying cars? Is that what we're doing? Is that where we're at? Are we talking flying cars, or is this something that's closer to us than flying cars? So, VA, I know you have a wonderful story here. Bust the myth and bring us into reality.
Thanks, Will. We believe that before any of our product reaches our client, we write on ourselves, eat our own dog food, as you may will. And we tested the facial recognition based attendance for about a year now. The entire company is on it, and the bots, we were testing for about 6 months, and I wasn't finding much progress. And then I realized that to make people really use it, I stopped desktop access. So you could not travel, you could not apply leave, you could not see your payslip, you could do just about nothing unless you came through bots. And that's what made people use the bots. And then they got so happy with it that they are not going back to the desktop even when we have given them the access. Idea is anything before it reaches the client, we are running it on ourselves, and now we are running voice on ourselves. And that helps train the system, as we have 2,000 employees and the feedback all over the world comes in. And based on the confidence that people had, we have onboarded 4 clients as well who are using the bots now. And we will soon be adding some clients who will be on facial recognition based attendance. And voice will be all pervasive within our company very soon. And so, this is not myth, this is reality. A lot of questions that you alluded to can be answered, but the system doesn't answer because we need to train the system to answer them. So it's a continuous process. It's an evolving process. It is something of a journey which we and our clients will jointly undertake and have answers to more and more questions for which the data exists in the system or outside the system. So that's where we are in the journey right now.
I love it. I love it. I think it's the most inspiring part of this whole bit for me is when you told me about drinking your own champagne or eating your own dog food. The idea that you're doing this yourself and you're forcing your company to kind of go through the experience. When again, getting back to the home, when we first got Siri on our iPads or we first interacted with Alexa, Alexa wasn't that smart. No, it wasn't that personalized. It didn't. It might have answered the question, but it wasn't perfect, and it's not going to be perfect at work. But it's starting, and the sooner we get into it, the better it'll be for everyone. And again, the title of the webinar is Voice and Employee Engagement. And so, how do we get there? I was truly inspired, which rarely happens to me, truly inspired that Ramco is actually kind of making themselves do this and going through it. That's hard. That's really difficult change management. And going through that, they're going to come on the other side, and they're going to be better, but they're also going to be better positioned to help their customers because they've been through it themselves. And the sooner we have access to those databases and we start asking them questions and we start getting smarter, the data gets smarter, the questions get smarter, the answers get smarter, the better. So I thank you for busting the myth, VA, and I know that Cynthia wants us to get on to Q&A, so I'll shut up and let her take us into Q&A.
Thanks, VA and William. That was an insightful conversation. Given the time, let's quickly move on to the Q&A session. We've been receiving a lot of questions. We will try to answer most of them during the webinar, whilst we will ensure to connect with you by email and social media and answer the rest.